Hello, my dear friends. Today we will talk about our results and why are we diving into the depths of our psyche. Many times I was asked on YouTube, why are you studying structures of the higher self, the soul, the ego, and so on? What's interesting there? Let's talk about it on a real example. Yesterday I received the following message. Natasha and Andrei, thank you very much. Mark started to speak and repeat the words. It turns out he knows a lot. He calls all the letters and digits correctly. He knows all the colors and generally he's doing great. Here is some background. 3 weeks ago we have worked individually and remotely with the boy, or more precisely with his grandmother. The child is 6 years old and this is what grandmother sent me. Masha, boy's mom, had a hard childbirth lasting 36 hours. The child had hypoxia, but they didn't pay attention to it. 2 vaccinations were made at the maternity hospital anyway. 2 years later, they noticed that Mark didn't develop like ordinary children. There was no contact with him. He didn't talk. He was visiting doctors of different specializations for a long time. We went through a bunch of different examinations. The doctors diagnosed autism. Now Mark is 6 years old and he started to speak after our session. Natalia and Andrei brilliantly coped with his terrible diagnosis and helped to remove the blocks in his head. Thank you for your help, thank you for being. With respect, Galina, boy's grandmother. I asked to send a photo with the diagnosis in order to make a full-fledged video on this case in the future. To show that this story is not a fiction, please check out the video of little Mark playing with his dad.
One. Один.
Ха.
Ха. У.
Как.
Как? Э.
Л.
Л.
П.
П.
Г.
Г.
В.
В. Оу.
Ноль.
Ноль.
Why am I making this video now? I do it so not only we could work with such children, because today the problem of autism is really actual and people who are working with mothers and fathers are doing just some kind of rehabilitation, but they don't work with mental structures. Ladies and gentlemen, there is a complete mess in our psychotherapy. For example, if you take the higher self, someone puts it above the soul, someone below the soul, someone thinks it's unnecessary, someone denies it, and everyone has their own terminology. But if you dive into the inner state of consciousness, you will find this is an absolutely specific department of the psyche. And now I will explain what the problem with this child. I'll draw it. The bottom line is that from the standpoint of simulation, our psyche is structured as follows. We have a soul program, we have a higher self, this is it, we have an ego, and we have a mind. They are connected and has an energetical and informational exchange. And this is the soul program. So the higher self belongs to our matrix structure. The soul is higher. The soul plays in our simulation and this is our matrix structure. The higher self is its representative here. Kind of a valve that feels resource injuries which our subjective reality builds off. So, when we looked at the psyche structure of Mark, we saw one interesting thing. His higher self was blocked here in some kind of cage. This cage was blocking higher self from developing after the age of 2, that is, the exchange of energy and information with these structures was blocked. The child's intellect was developing because the mind program unilaterally receives energy and information directly from the soul. But in order to play in this matrix structure, it is necessary that all structures be in balance and develop in complete harmony. So we fixed this disbalance. The question is, where does the cage came from? Or more precisely, who built it. So we delivered it back to the good person who created it. And this is probably not just one person, but the whole branch who developed these vaccinations. There are a lot of questions here, but we have brought everything back to the consciousness that worked of this experiment. I don't belong to the good kind of person who forgives such things. This structure had to be simply disassembled. We disassembled it completely. The cell in this part was brought into balance, and after 3 weeks, Mark began to develop his speech intensively. His intellect was fully restored, and you see that autistic child is talking. It turns out there is a theory in medicine. If the speech centers haven't developed before the age of 5, then they won't develop. But it's not necessary those children who had a damaged speech centers will have such cage as Mark does. And the cage can be on the ego, or on the mind program, or anywhere. Any kind of problem could be because of this structure's imbalance. So it turns out it took 3 weeks to launch a speech and accumulating neural specific connections. This is physiology. This must be studied, this must be looked at, and this shouldn't be dropped away. It's not necessary that all autists will have such a picture. Everyone has a very individual case. Mark had such a picture, someone might have a different picture, someone might have this cage blocked here, and then the development of the intellect and personality structure would be paralyzed as well. Cases can be different. If we see the structures, we can work with them. But this schematics isn't complete, because the higher self also has a structure of sandwich, and inside the structure also there can be changes. It needs to be studied, researched, and I think there will be changes for each disease. So, in order to do this, one must see. But in order to see, one must be able to load into a certain internal state of consciousness. But in order to load, one must be able to control one's feelings, one's reactions, one's own instincts. One must be conscious enough man. And that is what infodiving is all about. I even invite doctors, because now it's hard for me. I speak a lot of esoteric terminology. That is, what I see, I speak. And the medicine already has its own terminology. I have problems how to speak on a scientific language. I think I can cope with it, because there are a lot of like-minded people around me who understand how serious this is and how much medical industry can be changed. We want to help human health, to make out today incurable diseases and really make them curable. Today I just gave one example and one result. We already have such result for Parkinson's disease and for smaller diseases, smaller manifestations of life. I'm not even talking about stabilizing a person, making him happy, then balance his relationship and improve his life. Something like that. See you, friends!
До встречи, друзья!